everyone. Welcome back to the Let's Talk podcast with me and David, aka Shamrock Balls. And this week we're going to be talking about 1985's Back to the Future, which I know first-handedly how much David loves this movie. So, David, why don't you tell the people a little bit about your love of Back to the Future?
Yeah, this is another one, John. It's in my top 10 movies of all time. It might even be in my top 5 movies of all time. So I absolutely adore Back to the Future.
Yeah, I knew how much you love this because I know that you had Terminator figures and then you also had a really nice Marty McFly figure. So I know that you love this
Yes.
movie for I'm guessing you probably saw this sometime in the 80s, right?
Yeah, that's right. Oh, the figures. Yeah, I do. I have a nice Marty from Back to the Future 1, and I've got him from Back to the Future 2, and I've actually got the Western Marty as well, which I haven't actually set up yet. So I've got the 3 there. I've got the hat trick of Martys. But yeah, I remember seeing this movie on the TV. It must have been in the late 80s. As I say, I've said before, like I have older brothers, and I was always kind of influenced by what they were watching. And back then on like British television, they would be showing like one of these blockbuster movies around Christmas time. We always used to get really good movies around Christmas time: Ghostbusters, Temple of Doom, movies like that. And I think this was one of them. And I remember we had this on VHS, and it wasn't until I would say, because we had this on VHS, and then we had an original copy of Back to the Future 2, which my older brother owned. So I'd seen them two. And then the third one came on Sky Movies in the early 90s, and that's what completed the trilogy for me. So this movie, in a lot of ways, has always kind of been in my life since I was very young. And I remember when I got my own kind of VHS player it must have been the mid to late 90s. And I just decided that I wanted my own original copies of Back to the Future, because we had 2 taped off the television and then we had 1 original. So I went out and I rebought all 3 on VHS. And I still have those VHSs. And I just fell in love with this movie all over again when I was an actual teenager. Found it a lot more humorous, and just had a lot of heart. And I just love the whole world that you go into when you go into this movie.
Oh no, it starts tremendously. And I think you'll be disappointed to find out I actually didn't watch this movie for the first time until like the mid 2000s. And I watched it off the TV. I don't know why. I always knew about Back to the Future. It was just one of those movies that I'd never checked off the list. And it was just starting, and I finally watched it all the way through. And I was blown away by it. I thought this was like, I was like, this is one of the movies I was like, how did I miss this for this long? It's almost a perfect film. It's literally a 10 out of 10 5-star movie. Well written, well acted. I don't know why it took me so long, but I know that you actually got to grow up with all the characters. For me, I was kind of late to the dance.
Yeah, but mid 2000s, John. What would you have been, a mid teenager?
Yeah, I think I was 13 or 14 when I first saw it.
Yeah, which, listen, to me that's a real perfect age to watch this movie, because I think you can understand it a lot more than when you're younger. To be honest, I can't even remember like my first real impressions of Back to the Future when I was growing up. When we had those VHSs of the original part 2, but that was always my favorite. When I rediscovered it again, when I decided to buy the trilogy for myself, I then really became a big fan of part 1, and that's when I realized, this part 1 is something special. It is such a good movie. It's just so well written, from start to finish. The character interactions, the scenes, how they set up, how the payoffs throughout the whole movie. And yeah, I remember just kind of like memorizing scenes out of this movie, of the dialogue back and forward, especially between Biff and George, which when I was a kid watching this, Biff used to scare me. And then when I watched it when I was a wee bit older, I thought he was absolutely hilarious.
Oh, he is great throughout the entire trilogy. I always love Biff, but his character, the actor himself has to actually do a pretty good amount of work, because by the end of the movie, he's got to be like this, like kiss ass to the whole family. Where at the begining, all he's doing is just picking on George.
Yeah, and just sticking with the first movie, it's even just kind of like, so I don't get confused and go off and start talking about the other movies. Do you know what I mean? Because
Yeah,
Thomas,
try to stay contained.
we try and contain this because Thomas F. Wilson, I agree, is absolutely brilliant throughout this whole trilogy, and he plays so many different variations of Biff and his ancestors. But in this specific movie, you know, just him playing like original, we'll say original 1985 Biff, and then 1955 Biff, and then Biff, and then alternative Biff at the very end. But that original 1950 or 85 Biff, the way he's dressed,
Oh
and
my
the hard time he's given George McFly in his own kitchen about, I can't believe you loaned me your car without telling me it had a blind spot. And George is like, now, Biff, I never noticed any blind spot before when I was driving. And he's like, what are you, blind, McFly? It's out there in the yard, in the driveway. How do you explain that rack out there? You know, maybe not the fact that Biff wasn't paying attention, or, you know, was Biff drinking, because then he opens the fridge and says, I have your car towed all the way over to your house, and all you've got from me is light beer.
He's like, I spilled beer on myself when I got in the accident. Who's gonna pay for this?
Look, I got this all over my clothes. Who's going to pay for this, McFly? You know, and you know, it's so good. That kind of interaction is so funny, and then Marty comes in and he doesn't say anything, and Biff looks at him and says, what are you looking at, butthead?
Yeah, the way he talks, even as a full-grown adult, is ridiculous.
Yeah, say hello to your mom for me.
Yeah, and then walks off, which is good, because actually that's one of the couple setups they actually set up for the second one, I think, is like, you know, with the mom. And later on in the movie, when we get to it, Christopher Lloyd says, you know, hey, yeah, I'll also find out about the next 25 World Series.
Yeah, exactly. And that whole conversation, it's what I love about this as well, about what they have in that house, talking about setup. They have the exact same conversation only 30 years earlier in the diner in 1955. But I don't want to skip ahead too far yet. But even Crispin Glover's portrayal as well. Look, Crispin Glover and Thomas F. Wilson and Lee Thompson, all three of them, how they have to play three different characters throughout this movie. It's not just Thomas F. Wilson. They're magnificent. And even the older George in the original 1985, the way he looks and the way he behaves, he's so funny.
Oh my god, he's so squirmy in the beginning of the movie, how weak he is and everything, and the way he laughs. Yeah, Crispin Glover is great, honestly, in that role. He's perfect, to be honest. I couldn't imagine anyone else being able to do that, be that kind, because like I've never seen somebody like that. And then it makes you kind of wonder, and Marty's saying it throughout the whole movie, how is he my father? Like, how did my mother get attracted to this guy? Because he just seems like such a strange man.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing too, you know, when I what I would say was when I really, as I said before, fell in love with this trilogy was when I got those VHSs when I was a early teenager, mid-teenager. And as I said, I was a big fan of Sagamon, so I knew the Sagamon inside out. But then when I realized, no, that this is the one, this is the best one, this is absolutely amazing film. Part of that was these characters, and it was Crispin Glover's portrayal of George McFly, and he's so funny at those early scenes when they're sitting at the table, and he's like, believe me, Marty, you know, the playing at that dance is only going to give you headaches, and the last thing you need is headaches. And he's watching the TV and that laugh, and.
Oh.
Hey, Marty.
It's ridiculous. But then you see Lorraine, and she sits down at the table and she's saying about, you know, the uncle's not going to get out of prison, Uncle Gilbert Joey. And she said about, talking about setup as well and payoff. She says about, I think it's the daughter says to Marty, you know, while you were out pouring over the car, Jennifer Parker was on the phone and she was like, you know, I never chased a boy or called a boy or sat in a parked car with a boy. And the daughter says, well, how am I ever going to meet anybody? And she says, well, it was meant to be how I met your father. And she's like, that was so stupid. Grandpa hit him with a car. And then she says, oh, he was like such a sick puppy, but your grandpa brought him into the house. And that's when I realized the rest of my life I was going to be with him. But there's this kind of weird kind of energy going on, and he starts laughing at the TV.
It's like, that's the guy you chose for the rest of your life.
But all of them just kind of sit and look, and he's like, And there's just this weird kind of pause and silence. And like you said, John, when I was watching this the other night, I've seen this movie so many times. I mean, I'm ramming off lines here. I could ram off a lot of lines from the film. But even I was sitting thinking, how can Marty be the offspring of these two people?
I thought that the exact same thing, because all the other kids seem more like them, whereas he seems like this cool, like laid back guy. Everyone seems to love him. There is nothing about them that is in him.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm saying. Like, although I do think in watching this movie that, and I don't know if this was done on purpose in casting, is that when I look at young Lee Thompson and I look at a young Crispin Glover and I look at a young Michael J. Fox, facially, I do believe that he could be their kid.
Yeah, you could honestly say like that. It's the personality things that kind of don't really stick.
No, exactly. And I was thinking about this earlier, and I'm sure we'll touch on it as we go along. But to me, this movie is about unfulfilled dreams, because everybody in this movie has an unfulfilled dream. And it's basically saying that if you don't change something about yourself or your life, that you're going to be unhappy, or your dreams are not going to be fulfilled. And that's what this movie means. That's what I truly believe. You have basically George McFly, who's this author who is getting bullied, or wannabe author, and is getting bullied and won't stand up for himself. So his dream is unfulfilled because he won't stand up for himself. And then you have Lorraine's dream of this family. She becomes an alcoholic because of the way her life is. So that's an unfulfilled dream. Even Uncle Jailbird Joey didn't make parole. That's an unfulfilled dream. Poor guy didn't make parole again. He even baked a cake. That's an unfulfilled dream. And even Doc, to a certain extent, his dream is unfulfilled because he gets murdered.
He doesn't see the end of his life's work.
Exactly. And then that whole journey that Marty then goes on to change time and save Doc's life, their dreams have become fulfilled. And that goes back to Marty's as well, because his dream is not going to be fulfilled either, of being this famous musician, because he's too much like his father.
Yeah, and when you have a guiding figure like the Principal Strickland in this movie, just basically telling him he'll never amount to nothing, that's a great principle.
Yeah, but then even later on, that's what I'm saying about setups and payoffs. When Marty is with Jennifer, he does say, what if they tell me I'm no good? What if they say get out of here? And then you hear later on when Marty goes back to 1955, George McFly says the exact same thing about when he's saying about writing stories. And there's something that Marty learns about his father he never knew. He's like, George, what are you doing there? And he's like, I'm writing stories about, spacemen coming down and stuff like that. And he's afraid to tell him. He's embarrassed. He doesn't want anybody to know. He's keeping it to himself. But, he says the same thing. He says to Marty, what if they tell me I'm no good? And obviously
that same way.
The exact same way, but that's what he has kind of told his son. And then you have this other thing going on where Doc, actually Jennifer says it to Marty at the start, it's like Doc's always saying, if you put your mind in, you can't be saying anything. Marty then tells that to George in the past, and George then tells that to Marty at the alternate 1985 when he eventually gets his novel printed and published.
Yep. It took they said dreams do come true. So and that was always what he wanted to do. It took 30 years, but it came true.
And the same with Doc. It took 30 years to get his time machine, but it came true. And Marty saved his life because of what he had done in 1955. So that's what this movie means. That's what I think this movie means. It's about unfulfilled dreams.
I honestly think you're right. I think you're exactly right. That does make a lot of sense. I always thought about just Doc's dream, because he says numerous times how he lost his entire family's fortune on trying to get this thing done, because he hit his head and he knew exactly what it was going to take, but it just took forever for him to actually get it done. But I never really thought about the other characters. I did think Uncle Joey, though, the poor guy never getting on parole. I wonder what he did.
Do you know what? There was a series brought out a few years ago, IDW Comics graphic novels, and it was written by Bob Gale, who wrote Back to the Future, along with Bob Gale wrote the comics himself, but the movie Bob Gale wrote with Robert Zemeckis, and it was a series of unanswered questions to do with the Back to the Future universe. Like, how did this 17-year-old kid meet this Doc Brown who was in his 50s. It's a bit
Yeah.
weird, right? So it explained all that, and there was there was a double issue actually dedicated to how Uncle Joey ended up in prison. And I read the first issue, and I can't remember now, but it's got to do with Biff. And I've got the second issue, and I haven't read it. So I need to go back and read them and find out how Uncle James or Joey ended up in prison. But it was to do with that rascal Biff. They also done a comic, a graphic novel on Biff from when he was given the almanac to when he was murdered by Lorraine. She murders him. That's what happens to Biff.
I mean, now you know what? That's the ending he deserves.
But we could save that for Back to the Future too, maybe. But as I say, so Uncle Jailbird Joey, they did explain actually in these comics, so I must read it, John.
Yeah, now you got to tell me what happens. But, circling back to just how the original is a classic, this is the kind of movie that could have felt like just a Steven Spielberg ripoff movie, even though it's an Amblin Entertainment movie directed by Robert Zemeckis. It feels special, but it does still feel like it comes from Steven Spielberg, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this era of movies with Amblin, I mean, that's another one. Do you know why I get so nostalgic for just that 1980s Universal symbol just coming in?
I know. Although I get a little nostalgic for the 90s one, too, when they come around the Earth.
Oh, yes. Yeah. The funny thing is, Back to the Future 3 was the 75th anniversary. Do you ever see people they ask the question? I see it sometimes like a meme. It's like the canon. Which movie does this remind you of? Or Ryan, which movie does this remind you of? And the 75th anniversary, it does the different Universal logos throughout the years, and then it ends on that one in the 90s that you're talking about. It was 1990, and that always reminds me of the start of Back to the Future 3. But as you said about this movie being so Spielbergian, yeah, I mean, that era, Gremlins, Back to the Future, Goonies, all these tremendous movies that he produced, and it's got his fingerprints all over it. But I mean, I would say, like, if you ask Spielberg, and I agree, I mean, 100% the credit goes to Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, because he had produced earlier pictures for them, and they had been flops. And they had written Back to the Future in the late 70s, early 80s, and they couldn't get it made. And Spielberg had said to them, look, I'll produce it for you. And they had basically said, no, Steve, because you've produced these previous movies for us. They were flops, and we don't want you to have another flop under your name. It wouldn't be fair because you gave us a chance. So they, again, paraded around other studios around Hollywood, and none of them wanted to take it. The big problem, I think Disney were interested at one stage. The big problem was the subplot with the mother having a crush on the son. It basically touching on incest, and they wanted that taken out. There was other studios that were willing to do it, but wanted it to be more raunchy. They wanted it to go the other direction. They wanted to be more like those kind of teen comedies that you were seeing popping up in the late 70s, early 80s. And Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale were like reluctant to change the story that they had made. So eventually, I think it was Spielberg asked them, whatever happened to that movie you were going to do? And they told him, and he said that he would wanted to do it. He wanted to produce it for them. So fair play to him for putting his faith, just like he did in his friend George Lucas for Star Wars, into producing this movie. Because, without Spielberg producing, we wouldn't have got the Back to the Future we have.
No, it would have been such a different type of movie. It would have definitely not been this type of movie. It wouldn't have, it wouldn't have, I don't think it would have this adventurous score. Like, it's very light, this movie, and they knew the tone that they wanted for the movie in general, because that's why they fired Eric Stoltz, because he couldn't capture the tone they wanted. Even though they always knew they wanted Michael J. Fox. They always knew the movie they wanted to make.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And they went for Michael J. Fox, and he was on a contract with Family Ties, and they couldn't, they didn't want to release him. They actually, I believe, sent the script to. I'm not a big. I've never watched Family Ties. Well, I don't know if it was a big thing here over this part of the world, John. I know it was big in America.
Huge, yeah.
Yeah, but they sent it to the producer, maybe the producer, the script to the producer, or maybe it was his agent, Michael J. Fox's agent, and said, "We want him to do this," and he didn't even show it to Michael J. Fox because he knew if Michael J. Fox sees this, he will want to do it, and they kind of thought that he's needed on Family Ties. But what then happened was that they went for Eric Stoltz instead, and they started filming with Eric Stoltz, and I believe they spent something like $5 million. And after a week, they realized that it wasn't working, and they brought Spielberg in and showed him some of the footage, some of the dailies, and Spielberg went, "You're right, it's just not funny." From what I'm hearing, Eric Stoltz was playing it completely straight. He was playing it more like Marty was psychologically kind of dumbfounded by what was going on, rather than the absurdity kind of comedy, like you said a wee bit later, way Michael J. Fox plays it. And like Spielberg then went to, I think it was Sid Sheinberg, or it might have been Ned Tannen, who run Universal Pictures at the time, who Biff Tannen's named after. And he was the only one that could get production shut down and reshoot the movie again. I mean, they spent $5 million in 1984. That's a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
I mean, the studio could easily, man, you press on and make the movie, but because it was Spielberg, they done it.
Yeah, imagine they didn't do that. That's incredible, because like that's a lot of, like, it's one thing, like, you shot some stuff or you need to finish up and do some reshoots, but to shoot that much, get the wardrobe, now you got to go and do the wardrobe all over again, go back and rebuild sets if they haven't been destroyed. Like that's a lot of money that's just gone out the window. But Spielberg just made hit after hit for them. It's like, if this one is a hit and it, we can see the franchise dollars on it, which it's a gamble that paid off. Another one on Spielberg's belt, essentially. Yeah,
well, they're taking a gamble. Or you're right, they're taking a gamble, as in, like, we have a movie here that could be potentially the biggest movie of 1985, the summer of 1985, and do we want to continue spending? I don't know what the budget ended up being for Back to the Future, but maybe we want to spend another 5, 10, 15 million and maybe get 50 back, or do we want to get the guy that we wanted in the first place, and get a 250 back, because that's what blockbusters were making in the mid 80s. 200, 150, 180, 200, 250 million dollars at the box office domestically. That's just in the US alone. So they made the right decision, and this time it was they did get the Michael J. Fox, and he was busting to do it. Michael J. Fox told a story that when they started filming Back to the Future, they filmed it near where he was filming Teen Wolf.
Yeah, they did them back to back.
No, but he was filming Teen Wolf, and there was Eric Stoltz down the road filming Back to the Future. And he said, "What's going on?" And they says they're filming this new Spielberg movie. And apparently he said, "Oh, I'd love to be in that. I'd prefer to be doing that than Teen Wolf."
Which is probably now his two most well-known movies that he's ever been in, same year.
Listen, people love Teen Wolf. And I think I've seen interviews with Michael J. Fox where he seems genuinely kind of surprised that people love Teen Wolf. You know what I mean? I don't know what he's like now, but I mean, I think back then when I see those interviews, he always seems like a wee bit embarrassed that, I don't Teen Wolf. But people love Teen Wolf, and that was the thing. So eventually, when they got Michael J. Fox to do Back to the Future, it was an agreement that he would do Family Ties during the day and he would shoot Back to the Future at night. Not a night shooting, and he says he was getting like 4 hours sleep, and that was it.
Yeah, and he said, like, even he doesn't remember shooting certain scenes. He was like delusional while doing it, and it doesn't come across like that on the screen at all. I just can't imagine. Like, it's weird that they had Eric Stoltz, because Michael J. Fox, he plays this role perfectly, because he's got to he's time traveling, but he never acts like scared about doing this. Like, it's never really even brought up about like we could die. It's like, even though Doc gets shot and killed at the beginning of this movie, it never goes away and gets dark, this movie, which is why, I can believe that Eric Stoltz, why he would want to play it a little bit more, scared or like paranoid a little bit, because in a real life situation, that's how you'd be.
Yeah, I guess so. And I think Michael J. Fox getting a lack of sleep actually helped him with this role, in some of his kind of bewilderment and walking about in a daze.
Yeah, he does seem like sometimes like he's got like that look on his face, like, and he does look tired, I guess. I mean, he's not sleeping through this whole thing anyway.
Yeah, I always think about that. Like, for example, when he first goes back, right? It's like, so they're in the parking lot and the DeLorean's revealed, which is an amazing scene.
Oh my god, great piece. That's my favorite piece of score other than the theme in this movie, actually.
Oh, really?
I love that. It reminds me of Poltergeist.
When they first reveal it, when it first comes out of the back of
Smoke and everything pouring out.
Yeah, Dr. Brown's truck, yeah, and the music. I know what you're talking about, yes. And then the camera just pans around to the front of the car with the lights and it says DMC. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, I love that sequence.
It is so good. But the thing is, when he first goes back, like, and he crouches into the barn, and then when he drives to Hill Valley, like, it's dawn right away. So he basically hasn't had any sleep. He had a couple of hours sleep before he got there. So I always think to myself, like, was that when he time traveled? Did he time travel to just before dawn? Do you know what I mean? But the thing is, he soon gets hit by the car and he basically sleeps all day. So that's where he catches up with the sleep. Because I think about that too. I'm going, he's had no sleep. He hasn't been to bed.
Yeah, he had to like get the car hidden and everything like that. Which, you know, where he decides to hide, it always was like kind of a little bit of, I'm like, nobody sees this thing at all or looks over here this whole time.
Yeah. Just put a couple of branches on it and that's it, you know?
Yeah, that's it. No one drove by and looked, that looks a little strange.
Oh, it's that sticking out of the back there. but that scene in the parking lot where they actually reveal the DeLorean with Doc and Einstein, yeah, that's another really memorable scene out of this movie. When you're first really introduced to Dr. Emmett Brown.
Yeah, you only hear him on the phone before this. That's the first time we actually see him is when he gets out of the DeLorean.
Yeah, exactly. And he gives that exposition earlier in the movie about, you know, about the clocks. And he just says about that whole beginning of that movie, John, by the way, we'll just circle back to the start. How it starts up and the camera starts panning and it starts showing all the clocks and you hear the television on in the background and you hear about somebody stole plutonium. But then the skateboard stage across and it hits the box of plutonium. You can see it. It's actually in Doc's lab, you know, but you may not consciously be taking it all in, but it's all there at the start. And he says, look, meet me tonight at this particular time. And then the clock's start going off and he's like, oh, I'm late. You know, the clocks are 20 minutes. Yeah, the clocks are 20 minutes slow or something. And it goes straight into Power of Love.
Damn, I'm late for school.
I love that. Yeah, now I was going to talk to you about the opening because it sets the movie up perfectly just through the opening credits. You know, a lot of movies don't do that. Like the no moment in this movie is wasted. In the opening credits, they're telling you what this movie is all about. You could find it all right here. We get introduced to Marty. We get introduced to his love of music and playing it just a little bit too loud.
Yes,
on his ass.
Yeah, and you see a saying up behind him when he's with Strickland saying "Battle of the Bands," you know, which back in the 50s, it's done the Champion of the Sea dance posters, and you see, you know, that's a different poster that's in there, but. It's kind of like that's actually Huey Lewis from Huey Lewis and the News. Stop! I'm saying you're just too damn loud.
Yep. I love that little throwback, and the music they're playing, like it kind of sounds like the Power of Love in the background with his guitar over it.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think that is what he's playing. And then it shows you like real act Mayor Goldie Wilson, so it's setting all that up. And even the clock tower, save the clock tower with the palm flip as well. So when he goes, then he actually falls asleep, and when he goes to the Twin Pines Mall to meet Doc, that whole scene is absolutely hilarious because when he's talking about, you know, that Marty says, "Is this sucker nuclear?" And he's like, "No, this sucker's electrical." But I needed the 1.1 of 21 gigawatts of electricity. And he's like, "Did you rip that off?" And he's like, no. He's like, no. They wanted me to build them a bomb, so I made it out of shoddy pinball parts and stole the plutonium. But when the Libyans actually find him, and he's like, they found me. I don't know how, but they found me. Run for it, Marty! Like the side of his van literally says, Dr. Emmett Brown Enterprises.
Yeah, like how did they find you?
That makes me laugh every time. He's like, they found me. I don't know how, but they found me. Run for it, Marty! But it literally says that on the side of his van, you know?
Yeah, that's one thing about his character, and he's my favorite character in the movie is Doc Brown. I love him. I love how Christopher Lloyd plays him, but I love the fact that for as smart as he is, he does some dumb stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like even nearly forgetting the plutonium. You know, he's
Yeah, I
like,
know.
oh,
It's like, oh,
I'm
I
must be out of my mind. I'm going for one trip. You know, yeah, Christopher Lloyd is excellent in this movie. It's hard for me to pick a best character in this movie, John, to be honest, because I love every single one of them.
Yeah, but what sets it over the top for me with Christopher Lloyd is like a lot of the facial expressions he'll be making, even when he's not speaking. Like his eyes like open up real wide, and he'll like staring at Marty like this, just walking around the room. It's like
Yeah,
those little things that he does that just make me laugh.
yeah, exactly. And one of this great setups as well, which ties through the movie, is when he says about he puts in the date November 5th, 1955, and he's like, huh, that's the day I created time travel. And then he says, this place here was all open field as far as the eye could see. And he says, old man Peabody had this crazy idea of breeding pine trees. And he's
He
just
just-
blank look on his face.
yeah.
And he's like,
And then
and
he
he goes,
takes it off and then just moves on.
yeah, so that ties in later. So when Marty goes back in time and goes into the barn, and he's like, sorry about your barn, and it's the kids that say on the comic book, that ain't an airplane, and he thinks it's an alien, because of course the 50s sci-fi, they were all into that in the 50s, thought about, these things coming down from outer space. But I love when Marty comes out and he tries to shoot him with a shotgun, and he comes out of the barn in the car.
I know what you're gonna say because I love this too.
Yeah.
I was gonna bring it up, but you're already there.
Yeah, I had to bring this up. He drives over. There's two panes, and he runs over one, and you hear old man Peabody going, "Oh, why you space bastard! You killed the pine!" So when Marty gets back to the future later on in the movie, it's now called Lone Pine Mall.
1 point more.
Like, it's so good.
I love that thing because it is just all so well written. Everything has its purpose. Nothing's wasted, and it all adds up. I love that about this movie. It's a well written movie.
Yeah, it's so funny. And that's what I'm saying. Everything is just set up and knocked down throughout the movie. It's just set up, and then you see the payoff. And funny, I was thinking about this the day before we done the pod, John. I actually have the I've had this since I was a kid. Although it is one of the many books that I've kept, and I've boxed it away many years ago, and I've never looked at it in many years. But it's the novelization of Back to the Future Part 2. And we all know that those type of novelizations, tie-in novelizations that they done in the 70s and the 80s, they were based on like early draft screenplays. And there was a scene in the Back to the Future 2 novelization. I think it's, my memory serves me correct, it's when, is it when Marty's trying to get the almanac back off Biff, and Doc is in the DeLorean flying above them, so it's 1955, and he's got the radio on, and they're reporting a story that old man Peabody says that he's seen a UFO. It was in his barn. Now, I don't know if that was just written for the novelization, or was it in the Back to the Future 2 screenplay? Did they even film it? I don't know. I've never looked into it, but I thought, when I remember reading that novelization when I was a teenager and laughing, I read that novelization about 3 or 4 times. I loved it. It was brilliant.
I actually get it. I love that scene when they get there and how that whole family is played and everything. How they just look perfect, and then how they get scared and run off, and it's all done so good.
Yeah, it's so good. And of course, then that leads Marty to when he's driving down the road and he sees where his housing estate, is hasn't even built yet, but they have the land estates at the start. That scene always gets me. That makes me think. It's like, you grow up in a housing estate, and you're just living your life, and you never think about a time when that never existed.
Exactly. That was the beginning of like that whole neighborhood, and they're lived in homes by the time he's ever seen them.
Yeah, and that then ties into, of course, don't want to jump ahead too far, the third one, where he sees the new housing estate, which is being built in 1985, which he ends up living in 2015, living this brand new estate. So it's kind of like, that kind of mirrors that. But that's just like that's when he stops the car and gets out. And you say about the music, the score kicks in there of like, this realization. And he's like, this has got to be a dream. This can't be real. He doesn't believe what's happening.
I mean, I don't blame him. Like, yeah, that's what I mean though about how he still plays it pretty cool, but he's still so confused for quite some time. It doesn't really click in until he starts looking at well after he's already gotten the car out of there. He's still getting confused by when he gets into the town and he sees the other vehicle of who's running for mayor then instead of who he's used to, and seeing all the 50s cars and just seeing the town square 30 years earlier. Then it starts to kick in, but he spends a long time just confused and bewildered by everything.
Yeah, and when he gets to the town, the woman finds first though that car that pulls up and says, "Keep going, or we're doomed." Sounds like the woman says, "Keep going, or we're doomed." What's that about? That's a nod to another movie, isn't it?
I don't know. I just thought that they were in the same way where they thought it was an alien because of that 50s paranoia, because how the other people were, because I thought they saw him push the DeLorean in there, and they just wanted to pretend they saw nothing.
Yeah, well, that's before he pushes it in, isn't it? The car's parked. He bounces out, does he? Yeah.
Out and crosses the street. Yeah, he's hitchhiking and they won't stop for him. Yeah, what is that about?
I'm near certain. I don't have time to look it up. I'm near certain that is a reference to an old movie which Robert Zemeckis was a fan of, because he always liked to kind of reference movies that he was fans of. Like, for example, Part 2. Hey, I'm walking here.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Where the car comes out.
Cowboy. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know, but when he gets to the town, what I like is as well is how clean the town is compared to the 80s. Yeah, and he comes to the cinema showing a Ronald Reagan movie, whereas that cinema, I think in the 85 is it's showing porn movies.
Yeah, it's really run down now.
And Grammy, and they're re-elect Red Thomas.
I think that was his name, but yeah, it's even taken the same path around the square.
Yeah, but the thing is, I didn't realize this till recently. I didn't catch on to this, and I've seen this movie a million times. The drunk at the end of the movie who says "crazy drunk driver," that's Red Thomas. That's
really?
Yeah, because he says them Red.
Oh my god, I never noticed that.
Yeah, he's the old mayor. So yeah,
what happened to him?
There's a story there.
Yeah, is that
he did get
the novelization?
Well, I've only ever read the second. I never read the other ones, but he obviously didn't get re-elected, John.
No, he lost that election. Things really went downhill from there.
Exactly, and that's great. Then when he goes into the cafe, and just how different things are in the 50s. At the start of the movie, you see that cafe is Lou's aerobic center or something. They're all doing aerobics. Remember, he's on the back of the car and he waves into all the women and the wave out at him. But it's a cafe in the 50s, and you see the price of things. And even him, when he goes to look up where Doc lives, he has to hide his Casio watch. So yeah, it's beeping, and you see Lou kind of looking what was that?
What was that? And I like how he even goes up to the counter, which also dates the movie too, because this is something that I don't even remember it ever existing in my lifetime, was Pepsi Free. He's like, I'll take a Pepsi Free. It's like, no, you're going to pay for it, buddy.
But does he not mean free with no sugar?
Yeah, he means the drink Pepsi.
The drink free? Yeah. And that's what he says. Oh, you've got to pay for it. Yeah, and that's why he says, just give me something with no sugar in it, okay? Because he says, give me a tab. And he goes,
another thing that doesn't exist nowadays. So, if a new person watches, they might not even get those jokes, because that's an 85 reference taking place in 1955. Yeah,
exactly. And this is the next real funny thing that happens is Goldie Wilson working in the cafe. And he says to him, how does the conversation start again with Lou?
With Lou, well, he was talking about something, and Lou comes up to him and says, and then that's when he goes, yeah, you're going to be the mayor. You're like, oh, you'll never amount to something if you don't do, but what did he do? Did he spill something? Is that why he said that?
He says something about you'll see. He says, I'm going to be something. I'm going to be somebody one day. And that's what Marty says. But I can't remember what starts that conversation, but that's what Marty says. That's right, you're going to be mayor. And he's like, the mayor. I like the sound of that. And that's what he says. He says, colored mirror, that'll be the day. And he says, you'll see. One day, he says, I'm going to be the most powerful mayor in Hill Valley. And he goes, I'm going to clean up this town. And he says, good. You can start by sweeping the floor.
Well, you know what's really funny is that the town falls to shit under him, whereas this guy who was the mayor, he was doing a pretty good job. It looks
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, right enough. And I didn't even realize that till I was saying it there, John. But the funny thing is that is just more of a reflection of the 80s rather than, say, that particular mayor more than anything, isn't it, really?
Yeah, no, that's why, like, the showing it turning from a cafe in the 1950s into an aerobic studio is because in the 1980s, you got the leg warmers, jazzercising, and everything like that.
Yeah.
That's a 1980s thing. The town basically overrun by porn, all this stuff where it went from Ronald Reagan to that, which is a great joke in the movie as well.
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan, the actor?
Yeah, it became the town became a bit more trashy, and you're right. That's more of a reflection of America under Reagan at that particular time. That joke, that gag about Ronald Reagan, it's funny. But I was thinking about this the other night. How would Marty telling Doc who the president is in 30 years convince him that he was from the future? He could have said any name. It would be Doc would be none the wiser. That's the only bit I don't understand about that gag. I know it's just a gag, but that's the bit I don't understand.
It's really just to make the joke, because I thought the same thing as you. Like, what if you just said, like, I couldn't tell you, like, in 30 years, like, is there going to be a politician that's around now that I'm going to know the name of? Hell no. Unless they were president, I don't know who the hell they are.
Yeah, exactly. It's not, it's like somebody grabbing your door and saying, and you're saying, who's going to be president 30 years, and them saying Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah,
but you are going to laugh, but it's not going to prove he's from the future.
No, like, I can believe it now just because of what's happened. But back then it's like, the actor, like, what are you? He could easily just said no, just coincidence, same name. And then what would he blow past that?
Yeah, and that's the whole thing, because it shows the Ronald Reagan movie playing in the cinema when he first comes into the square. But another gag that I do really appreciate in this movie, and this, I didn't realize how much it was said until it was really, because as I said to you before, when we do pods, we're doing popular movies that me and you love and we've seen a million times. Well, some of the movies we've seen a million times, and sometimes when you pop it on, you don't pay a full attention to it. And so for me doing the pod, I'm like, I want to pay full attention to this. And it's the joke about the life preserver.
Yeah, that's a great running joke.
And it is a good running joke, but it culminates in basically when Marty goes to Doc's and he's got that thing on his head and he's trying to read his thoughts. And he's like, don't say a word. And he brings him in this house and he goes, you've come a long way. So he's come a long way because he thinks he's a sailor. And he's like, no. And he's like, you're trying to sell me a subscription to, and it was something to do with sailors or something. And he's like, no. And he's like, wait. He's like, it's not working at all. Like, it is not. He's just trying to guess because of what he's wearing.
He's hoping that it's gonna influence his mind, the machine, to actually this is. But it's like, no, I love it. They bring it. Everyone keeps bringing up the life preserver.
Yeah.
You get to his parents' house, to his mother's family's house, and I like that family. By the way, I thought they were actually a nice family. It's a shame to have Uncle Joey.
Yeah, that whole scene is brilliant as well, and I love how it's just like young Lorraine. It's kind of like he wakes up and he thinks he's dreaming because he hears his mum's voice, and then when she switches the light on, he's like, you're so young, and he's like, where's my pants? And she's like, on my hope chest. And then when you hear her mother, Marty's grandmother, shout, your dinner's ready, she's like, oh my god, put your pants on. So and she's calling him Calvin because of his underwear, his Calvin Klein underwear. But even when he's down the stairs, she says to him, so Marty, I guess you're a sailor. That's why you wear that life preserver, right? But like when he comes down and he says about, do you know where, what do you call Riverside Drive is? And he's like, oh, it's over by such and such. And he's like, I suppose that's where JFK, beside JFK Drive, John F. Kennedy Drive. And he's like, who the hell is John F. Kennedy?
Yeah, never even heard of him.
Never even heard of him. And then when he says about the TV, oh, I've seen this one. And the kid who is his uncle says, have you seen this one? It's brand new. And he's like, "Ah, seen on a rerun. That's a rerun."
Yeah, that's right. TV's new then.
He's kind of like, "Oh, you've got a television?" He's like, "Of course we do. You know, we've got two of them."
And the mom's like, he's lying. Nobody has two televisions.
Nobody has two television sets, but I noticed everybody's got a piano though. He's a piano in the corner. So I mean, they must be rich if they have a piano in the corner. Would I be right in saying that?
I don't know. I mean, I always kind of took that as they needed some sort of form of entertainment back then. Like they had the radio. A lot of people, I guess, played the piano. Nobody in my family has ever had a piano, but they're all talentless, so that's probably
like myself, like myself.
I mean, I'm not getting a piano either. I'm just
no, I don't have one either. It would be nice as an ornament, you know, so people think you do play. You know, when you come in, oh yeah, I play the piano now and again.
And then if they ask you like to play something, it's like, oh, I got something, and put the Jaws theme on.
I can play this, dun it. That's it. That's basically it. Or as you said about the radio, the wireless, as it was known as back then.
Yeah, that's it. You had that back then, and that was
the-
all.
The wireless is the would you have called it the wireless back in the olden days?
In the olden days, yeah. I
That's
always think big. And you know what else they noticed about the 1950s? Did you notice about the movie theater? It said air conditioned, which kind of threw me off a little bit because I get it. And this is a summer movie. It always feels like that's why we're doing it now. But it is technically in like almost winter.
Yes, exactly. And I know that we had talked about this two movies kind of like excuse me, in season. And no, this movie set in October, November, but it does to me just feel like a summer movie at the start with, you know, Power Love playing and apart from the storm of course towards the end, but look, you know, you get summer storms, you know what I mean? So it does feel to me like a summer movie. But you saying there, yeah, but the air conditioning in the movie theater. Did you recognize who Lorraine's mum is?
I recognized her, but I couldn't pull the actress's name, but she does look familiar.
I only found this out recently. I never ever recognized her. She is the mother from Gremlins.
Oh my God, you're 100% right. And that makes, I mean, that's another thing that overlaps besides maybe she just somehow works with Amblin. And because, the town square is the same one from Gremlins too.
The exact same set. And just touching on the grandparents, one of my favorite lines in this whole movie is when they're at the dinner table and the grandmother says, "You know, Marty, you look familiar. Do I know your parents?" And he says, I think you kind of do. And she's like, "Well, maybe I should give them a call and let them know you're okay." And he's like, "Oh, you can't because they're out of town." And then the rain says, "Maybe Marty should stay the night with his parents being out of town. He can stay in my room." And grabs his leg. Yeah,
jumps up and runs out of there.
He's like, I gotta go. It was nice meeting you. I'll see you all later, much later. But it's the grandmother says, "He's a very strange young man." And the grandfather says, "He's an idiot. The parents are probably idiots too." Lorraine, if you ever say that acts that way, I'll disown you. That is hilarious. But he also meets Jailbird Joey, and that's just funny as well. He's in like his playpen or his cot, and it's got the wooden bars on it. And she actually says, "This is little baby Joey." Says he likes it in there in his playpen. He cries every time we take him out, so we just leave him in there. And Marty says, "You better get used to these bars, kid."
Yeah. It was always in him. He just always liked to be behind bars.
Yeah, that's it. He just likes it. He's became what do they call institutionalized from a young age.
Yeah, he's scared to get out, like in the Shawshank Redemption. He's only used to one way of living.
Yeah, exactly. But you were saying there, John, about the town square. Yes, this is the exact same town square that they filmed Gremlins in, and they also filmed parts of Psycho 2 in this town square as well. And I'm sure there's plenty of other movies. I think To Kill a Mockingbird as well. I even think the end of Psycho 1 is filmed at this part of the studio as well.
It's a very famous lot, and I mean, it's a beautiful looking set. The way that they age it up for the 1980s and then age it down for the 1950s. Even the school set is awesome. I like that how because schools. I mean, I don't know how it are over there, but like they always look like very dated because they don't ever update them. So I like how in the 1950s and in the 1980s the school still looks almost identical, and Strickland never had hair.
He never had. He was like, Jesus, didn't that man ever have hair? But I bet you that's what people think about me. When I show them that I did have her, it's a shock. Yeah, look, that's set. It's one of my dreams to visit Universal Studios Hollywood and to visit that set. I think it's amazing. It's iconic. There's that word again. It is iconic. The school, I believe, was a real school in California.
It looks like it.
Marty actually says that about, oh Jesus, they really cleaned this place up. They haven't cleaned it. He's just run back, and but again, I think we talked about this in one of our early pods about how the original ending of Back to the Future was to be that they needed a nuclear reaction, so they went to a power plant, and that's where they sent the car back. But it was too expensive, so they had to rewrite the ending that it takes place at this clock tower on the back lot. And to be honest, it's far better for it.
Yeah, the ending scene of this, everything to do with the clock tower, but honestly, the whole movie just becomes iconic and classic. Like everything before, it's like all set up for the big third act at the dance while the doc is setting up the clock tower, and how we're editing between the two scenes. It all builds up perfectly. How the mom starts to get turned off by Marty, which I love all those scenes. Like, I feel like I'm kissing my brother. Like, all that stuff is just iconic.
Because you're right. The first half of the movie sets everything up. The one thing I find about this movie, and it's not a criticism, is that I find the middle act to be pretty short in comparison. You have this big setup at the start, and the climax must go on for almost half an hour. This movie... It is long. This movie basically has like 4 endings.
Yeah, it really does. I mean,
think about it.
But it's only really between the 2 locations until we get back to 1985. But
you have the 4 endings. The first ending is basically him getting his parents back together and overcoming Biff. Mm-hmm. That's your first ending. Your second ending is him getting back to the future. Your third ending is him saving Doc. And the final ending is basically the resolution, which you realize that he's changed the future. Now, before I jump too far ahead about all the endings, the whole setup with the mother, with Lorraine and George and Biff, I love all that too. Him befriending George and saying to him like, George, you really need to ask Lorraine out because she likes you, and he's like, you think so? And like, at this stage, she's hasn't even noticed George. Do you know what I mean? No interest in George. And a few times, the first time he approaches her, he's hi, I guess no, and she just totally ignores him and is like, oh, Calvin, how's the head, blah blah blah. But then later on, he's walking home from school, and Marty's running after him and says to him, George, if you do not ask her out, it's going to be the last thing I ever do. And he's kind of like, why do you keep following me around? And he's like, I can't take her to the dance. My favorite show, science fiction theater's on. And that's when he gets the idea, the spacesuit. I'll scare him into it. And then that next scene is real. George is just a mess. And he's running across the square and he's like, Marty! And his hair's all over the place and his shirt and all's hanging out. And Marty's like, George, where have you been? I've been looking for you everywhere. And he's like, I overslept. He says, last night, Darth Vader came down from Planet Falcon and says if I didn't take Lorraine to a dance, he'd melt my brain. But even though he says, no, let's keep this brain melting stuff to ourselves. He says, nice, he's in the diner. You go on in, ask her out. I don't know how to do that. And he's like, well, just say whatever springs to your mind. And he's like, nothing's coming to my mind. And he's like, oh, Jesus, George, it's a wonder I was even born. And he says to him, what? And he's like, nothing. He says, tell her that you are destiny. And he's writing it down. He's sitting writing it down. And
he's like, this is good stuff.
But it's a way Michael J. Fox like, George, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm writing this down. It's good stuff. But that again, this is something which is set up earlier about Biff saying, don't want to see you ever in here again, McFly. And then he notices him in there. And that's where he goes to bully George and Marty hits him and then they have the chase outside. And he basically, Marty creates so many things in this movie. He creates skateboards and he also creates rock and roll.
Oh yeah, the John go Johnny go. I mean
Chuck Berry.
that's probably yeah, I know, and that always I love that. Like, you know that new sound you've been looking for?
Well, listen to this.
Oh man, and I mean, my God, if he could play guitar like that, he should have been famous.
Yeah, and I have the soundtrack, and it actually says on that's that signed by Michael J. Fox. It actually says on the soundtrack, Johnny Be Good. It's a cover. It's not the Chuck Berry version, and it says by Marty McFly and what do you call the band? The Starlighters or something? The Starlighters.
Yeah, I love that band, by the way, and I like the scene. Actually, we kind of went past it when they're in the car, and the other people like be call them. What do you call them? They called them a racist term, and then they all jump out of the
Yeah.
car. And he's like, "I don't want to get addicted to reefer."
Yeah, and he's like, get out of here, Packerneck or Packerwood or something. Go home to your mamas.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's the thing what you're saying about. I know I've went way back here. It's just this is to me the first ending, and you're right. What I actually like about the whole thing about taking the rein to the dance, and when he realizes that George isn't going to be able to take her out because she comes and she asks Marty out, which she says, I never chased the boy or phoned the boy or sat in a parked car with the boy, but she does all those things, and that's the whole thing because Marty's thinking, okay, I'll take her and I'll take advantage of her and I'll come across like a scumbag, and then George will come and save the day. And I love when they're in his backyard and he's telling George what to do, and he's kind of like, George is like, well, why is she going to get angry with you? And he's like, well, that's what nice girls do, when you take advantage of them. And he's like, you mean you're going to go and touch her on her and lifts the bra? And he's like, no, George, no. And he's like, you come to the car and you open the door and you say, and he's like, and he just pauses, and Marty says, you're alive, George. And he's like, oh, hey, you, get your damn hands off her. And he's like, you really think I ought to swear? And he's like, yes. God damn it, George, swear. And he's like, oh, it sounds so easy, but I don't know why I'm so scared. And he's like, if you put your mind it, you can call me anything. There's nothing to be scared of. It's all an act. But that's what I like about in the car, when he's in the car with Lorraine, and he's like, do you mind if I park? And she's like, yeah, of course. And he's like, what? And she's like, Marty, I've parked loads of times with boys. And he's like, and then she starts drinking and says, do you want a drink? And he's like, Jesus, you drink too? And she's like, don't be such a square. But he warns her, don't be drinking so much, because he knows in the future she becomes a heavy drinker.
Yeah, that's another payoff.
And the whole thing about when she jumps on him to kiss him, that to me is like fate telling her that's wrong.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be doing that.
It feels bad. Like, she's overwhelmed with how bad it is.
Yeah, and right away that connection's completely broke. That's going to go no further.
Yep. You just wish that more families would have thought about that other than movies.
Yeah, exactly. And and then you have this scene, and this is the thing about this movie too as well, John, is that I also feel as well as that I've said it before about other firsts and franchises. I love this trilogy. This is my favorite trilogy of all time. But to me, the second and third movies became a wee bit more cartoonish. Whereas this one here, to me, even though some of the characters you could consider cartoonish, but this one to me basically has a wee bit more grittiness to it. What would the term I would use for it? It's not even a grittiness, but it does have a wee bit more of
realistic.
A realistic or darker tone to it, because look, at the end of the day, when I was a kid and I seen this movie, Biff scared me. Like, Biff in the sequels, Biff in an alternate reality in part 2, he murders George, but it still all feels kind of cartoonish, even though he murdered George. And this one here, like, he was literally gonna snap his arm, but not only that, he was gonna rape Lorraine.
Yeah, he was really gonna do that and he tells the other guys to get out of there, and you can tell they know it's wrong, but he tells them to get out of there, and luckily, when George shows up, actually shows him that he actually can really be strong, and that's why that moment works so well, because he realizes it's Biff and he's going to back down because, he's scared of Biff. But then he's like, no, I can do this. If I put my mind to it, I can actually do it. And he did.
But it's not only that as well, John. I also think that like the feeling that Lorraine had about Marty previously, feeling it was wrong. There was something within him was telling him, do the right thing. Even if it meant getting beat up or knocked out or getting your arm broke. Deep down, he wasn't really a coward. At the end of the day, there's plenty of people probably would have walked away, but he stood up to the bully. And the thing is that he didn't go to throw the punch until he pushed Lorraine to the ground and started laughing, and there's something came out of George there, and he knocked Biff out pretty good.
Yeah, he spun him around. He was gone.
Yeah. So that to me is like the first resolution. Even though when we go into the gym and they do Johnny Be Good, and this is the thing that always confused me. I wanted to ask you about this. So George is dancing with the Lorraine. Marty's on stage playing the guitar. This like ginger geek comes over, and I could say ginger because I used to have red hair and I'm Irish, so I can say those things. I do have a red beard. No offense to your beard. But he's like, scram, McFly, I'm cutting in. And then Marty starts to disappear. Now, is this scene trying to tell us that, first of all, was it a fluke what George done? Is he still a card? And this was him pretty much saying, no, I'm not the same George anymore. What do you think that scene was about?
That's exactly what I thought it was about. It's like it was more reassurance that wasn't a one-time deal with him. And if this guy cut in there, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's meant to be like the Lorraine's going to end up with that guy, but more in the sense she's just definitely not going to end up with George. So he has to like almost like a follow-up showing that like he's a changed person now.
Yeah, and that's when he kisses her because he was afraid to kiss her before. She was like, well, are you going to kiss me? And he was kind of like, oh, I don't know.
He got confidence, and then we see that carries on for the rest of his life.
Yeah, exactly, and that's when he kissed her. And even when he's standing at the door at the back, and he's got the coat over the shoulder and all.
Yeah,
you know, he's like, you know, and you were saying about score earlier on.
Yeah, we haven't touched on Alan Silvestri's score. Is this one? Because I know that you actually picked Back to the Future 3 in our scores pod. So,
yes.
I know that's still Alan Silvestri, but the original is the original.
Yeah, and do you know what? It's been a while since I've listened to it, and I listened to it today, and I was like, oh, this is such a great score. Maybe I should have picked this as number 5. But no, the parts of this score that I actually like, everybody knows the Back to the Future theme, and I remember that in the making of that, when he hired Alan Silvestri, Robert Zemeckis, Alan Silvestri was discussing the movie with Robert Zemeckis, and as he was walking away from him, Robert Zemeckis turned to Alan Silvestri and just says, make it big. And that's what he done with the Back to the Future theme, which is amazing. I love that theme. And it's very reminiscent of the big blockbusters of that time, of your John Williams scores. But to be honest with you, my favourite parts of these scores are the more kind of intimate part of the scores, the more kind of sentimental parts of the score, the scenes that he has with his parents, the scenes that Marty has with Doc about trying to tell him about the future. For example, when he's writing the letter to Doc to tell him what happened in the future, because Doc just doesn't want to know. He's afraid of endangering his future.
That's a question I have actually for you.
Yes,
is with that. Just before we go on a little bit more about the score, he finds out that he gets killed because he watches it on the VHS, but yet he doesn't want to know anymore. But it's like, you already know the outcome.
What do you mean? Because he says, they found me.
Yeah,
I don't know how they found me, but he doesn't know that they killed him.
No, but he's like trying, but the way he keeps rewinding that tape, it kind of goes against a little bit what he's saying, like how he's watching it over and over. Like he's definitely fascinated by like what happens to him and how he does it. But yet then he doesn't want to know, like, I don't want to change it, but it's like you already, like, you can't erase that from your mind. So I just always wonder if that, like, kind of like, it's just maybe he changed his mind then, or if he felt that way the entire time, or like he just couldn't, his intrigue got the better of him in that one moment.
Yeah, look, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I know, because he's reminded, his intrigue is getting the better of him when he's reminded right away that then when Marty comes in just to tell him, look, I've got to tell you, that's when it almost feels like, he's a scientist. So a scientist rules with his head, right? He doesn't rule with his emotions. He doesn't rule with his heart. But he's still human at the end of the day. So I think that when Marty comes in, he's just kind of, that's the scientist coming out and saying, no, you've endangered yours. I don't want to endanger mine. But you're right, he's only human. He is always going to wonder, and I always wondered to myself, if he didn't, why did he put the letter back in his pocket when he started ripping it up? And then it dawned on me the other night when I was watching this, because he couldn't just throw it all over the street, because what if somebody found it? And Doc would think like that, that if somebody finds that letter, it could have consequences for the future. So that's why he puts it back in his pocket. And obviously he keeps it in his pocket. And for whatever reason, he decided, as he said at the end of the movie, what the hell, to take a chance to save his life. But as I was saying there about the score, it's like even the score after George knocks out Biff, when he says to Lorraine, "Are you okay?" And then she looks at him, the way she looks at him, and the way he lifts her up, and that music is amazing. And then as well, that then goes into, it's the same kind of music when Marty's leaving them, and he says to them about. She says, "Do you mind if George walks me home?" And he's like, "That's great. You're going to be good together." And he goes to turn away, and he turns and he says, "Oh, by the way, if you ever have kids and they set fire to the rug, go easy on them." What do you think that's about, setting fire to rugs?
I always picture in my house, like, what did he do that he set fire to the rugs? I assume he was just playing with matches or something.
As kids, maybe do.
Yeah, I guess it's, he was born in the 60s, so I'm going to guess like it was the 1970s or something. So I don't know what he was playing with, but something happened that the rug went on fire.
But he says go easy on them. I could never imagine like the alternate George, or sorry, the original George or Lorraine going hard on anybody.
No, I think they'd be so passive aggressive, especially George. Maybe Lorraine. Maybe she's a little bit of maybe she's an angry drunk sometimes. I don't know.
Maybe that's what it is. Yeah, she could have been drunk. Maybe, yeah. But that music there, and then that this goes into, while we're talking about the score, this is just went perfectly here, because now we go into what I call the second ending of this movie, and you have this whole set piece at the clock tower, and from when Doc is like, "Damn, where is that kid? Damn."
I love that. He does that and walks back and forth and just says it again and again.
Yeah, and that music from when that starts to when Marty goes back, it's 10 minutes long and it's continuous. And I absolutely love that music, and it's got everything in that score. What I love about that score in that 10-minute piece, it's got the big score at the end of the Back to the Future theme, and it's also got all those other elements through it. And one of my favorite pieces is Doc is explaining to him about, here's your clock. If you're waiting behind down there, get down there. Once the alarm goes off, go down. The electricity will hit the height, it'll come down, it'll go in the flux capacitor, and you'll be fine. And it's like this kind of like it's like a military type music. It's kind of like you're going on a mission, right? And then Doc then he says, "I see you in the future," or whatever. And Marty gives him this big hug and says, "I hope so." Now, your question, maybe that's what made him read the letter. He hadn't found it.
Yeah, maybe he thought about, maybe he was trying to warn me, because this is a younger Doc Brown, so of course he's a little bit more, his ego hasn't been damaged yet like it is in the future. So he also doesn't have the relationship with Marty yet. He doesn't realize that Marty, he knows that Marty likes him, but he doesn't understand. They don't have the years of friendship that they have in the future yet. So maybe now he sees like, oh, this kid really cares about me. Maybe that note was important.
Yeah, well, it was that line to me. Like, what if you watch it again? That's what I'm saying about there's certain moments in this movie, with the music as well, sentimental moments, character moments. He says them something along the lines of, "I'll see you in the future," and then men back in those days didn't hug each other.
No, they didn't.
No, they didn't do that. Now, he says a line to him about seeing the future. He says, "I hope so." And he gives him a big hug, and you see the look on Doc's face, and he hugs him back. Now, if you're giving somebody a hug, what type of hug it is. The hug he was giving him was a goodbye hug, right?
Yeah.
Now, he hadn't found the letter yet. Now, but Doc then says to him, "Don't worry, everything will be fine." Doc is taking that "I hope so" as in, like, I hope I'm going to get back home. But no, he knows, he from that hug, it goes back to your question. That's what I think. And when he finds the letter, I love how the music then switches to this music. The music's class. It's almost like, you're destroying your fate, you're destroying your future. He's ripping the letter up, and he's like, "I don't want to know." And that's when the branch comes down and stops that bit of conflict between these two characters, and they've got to fix the branch.
Yeah.
Or the lane, sorry, from the branch.
Yep, which I love that tension. It's built up so well with that, with everything, with the are they going to run out of time? And it all, of course, we know it's going to happen, but still, watching the movie 100 times, you still have tension. And a lot of the work, the score is perfect. Then I also love the leaves blowing around. It's the only time it
Yes.
feels like a fall movies with all the like cold leaves blowing around. With the thunderstorm going on. It's perfect.
Yeah, and I think we need to talk about it, but before we get towards the end of the movie here, we haven't even talked about it. The DeLorean. What do you
Oh,
think of
yeah.
the DeLorean time machine, John?
It's always fascinating to me that DeLoreans didn't have a longer lifespan, because that is one of the coolest cars in movie history, and it's the perfect car to make a time machine out of. I mean, those suicide doors. I love the DeLoreans.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, I think again we'll use the word iconic. It is iconic, and it's one of the most famous movie cars of all time. And it was really funny that I think it was this movie that made this car more famous than infamous. It was infamous before because of John DeLorean and that motor company.
Yeah.
But this movie gave this car a real life of its own, and it's lived on ever since. But the funny thing was, apparently they were very bad cars. They were rubbish.
That's what I've heard too. It's like it looks. The '80s were filled with cars like this, where the car looks really cool, but it's like apparently a piece of junk. It's the same thing with like the Pontiac Fiero. Always looks
Yeah.
like a cool car, but then I always hear people talking about the thing didn't have power steering. It was like driving a tank. Like, it looks cool though.
Yeah, and as I messaged you last week, we were talking about it, and I says that the DeLorean was built not too far from where I live. It was built basically where I was grew up and raised. In the same year I was born as well.
Yeah, well, that was an iconic year. Two great things came out of Ireland, and mom's dead now.
The car's got a lot more life in it than I do.
It'll live on probably longer than you. Like it's
Yeah.
legacy.
Its legacy, yeah, its legacy will live. It's I won't even have a legacy.
Legacy is this video, and whoever watches it.
And I hope this video lasts 4 years, never mind 40. But do you know? Yeah. But do you know that the original idea for a time machine was a fridge?
No, I didn't know that. Like, honestly, that's what I would think more of, like a time machine than I would think of, like, like I thought of like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure with like the what's that freaking thing? A phone booth, which is very dated as well. And then in the Terminator, we don't even see the time machine until Genesis, thank God.
Yeah, I can't even remember the time machine in Genesis, but the phone booth remains with Doctor Who.
Yeah, which they definitely ripped off, because Doctor Who was around well before that.
Yeah, oh yeah. Doctor Who's been around since the 60s, I think, maybe even earlier, 50s, 60s, I think 60s. But like, yeah, it was in the original screenplay. It was a fridge. You went into a fridge, and it was Steven Spielberg that said, "You know what? I think kids are going to start climbing into fridges. You need to change it to something." So they started thinking, "Well, why don't we change it?" And I mean, if you have a time machine, so this whole theory about time travel. If you see time travel movies, I don't know if it's in stories as well, and the filmmakers explain this. It says you can travel through space and time. So, for example, say I'm sitting in Ireland right now. Say I got a time machine, but I wanted to go back to the Old West. All I had to do was put in like the 1880s, right? And I would be in the Old West. Yet 1 minute I was sitting in Belfast, next minute I'm sitting in bloody, you know what I mean? The Old West. That's traveling through space and time. They didn't want to do that. They wanted to stay in the same location. But they thought themselves, but if you did have a time machine, you would want something mobile. So they decided to make it a car. So then they started thinking, oh, well, what would Doc Brown drive? What would Doc Brown turn into a time machine? And they went, a DeLorean. So that's why they picked a DeLorean. I think it was it Ford? Was it a Chevrolet? Chevrolet, they Ford Chevrolet? I'm not in the cars.
Well, the DeLorean? The
No,
DeLorean.
do you ever hear, is the Ford make Chevrolets?
No. Ford and Chevy are two separate brands. They're two big U.S. companies, actually.
Well, it was a type of Ford car which actually contacted the filmmakers and said, "Listen, if you make your time machine into this car, it was one of their cars, we'll pay X amount of pounds." No advertising, the way they do the advertising. And Bob Gale says, "Doc Brown does not drive a fucking Ford."
No, it was probably a Mustang or something like that, or a Taurus.
So I think it was a Ford Mustang or something. I think you may be right.
Yeah, if it's Ford, it was probably a Mustang or a Taurus. If it was a Chevy, it was probably a Camaro or a Corvette.
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was. Now you mentioned. I think it was a Ford Mustang. It was Bob Gale says Doc Brown does not drive a fucking Ford Mustang. And
That no, honestly, they picked the perfect car because I'm trying to run through my head of what other 1980s cars look like, and I cannot imagine anything but like a DeLorean. Like if he was in a Mustang, it would look strange.
yeah, and it just works out perfectly because I love how like as I said, I grew up with these movies, so it wasn't like I knew I was so familiar with Back to the Future Part Two. But the thing is that the flying DeLorean. I mean, the car looked so futuristic with the gull wing doors. The fact that at the end when the tires turn in and it takes off, I mean, you could believe that flies.
Oh yeah,
It looks cool.
it looks incredible. Like it really, and you believe it. And then of course he puts the sunglasses on to all really tie it back in, set us off for Back to the Future 2, which that's the fourth ending you were talking about, but you didn't bring up the third ending yet, which is the one where he goes back to the future and he goes back to the mall. And he said it 10 minutes earlier, which was smart thinking, but he could have said it. Why not 20 minutes? Why 10? Why cut it close?
Yeah, exactly, and that's the whole thing. When he's back in the car and he says, "I can just go back and warn him," which it's really strange when you're watching this movie. You don't even think that. You just go along with it. Doc says, "I'll send you back at the exact same time. It'll be like you were never away," and you just go with it because you go, "Yeah, that's logical. He's never away." And then when the car conks out and he realizes, "Oh, I can go back earlier and warn him." But you're right. Why not go back to that morning? I give you more time. But I just put that down to Marty just not thinking fourth dimensionally. No, he's just not thinking. He's just a teenager. He's just thinking, "Oh, sure, I can go back 10 minutes," because Marty's always late.
Yeah.
If I was 10 minutes earlier, man, I wouldn't be late. Rather than thinking, well, if I was an hour early, it may be better.
Yeah, maybe that would do it. Or, maybe from the beginning of the movie, well, that would have been cool if it was the same time, but like how the clocks were set 20 minutes earlier at Doc's apartment.
Yeah, well, that's true, exactly. And the first thing before we see Marty into the in the square is another wee nugget which I love, is that when Doc's on top of the clock tower and he's trying to fix the cable and it crumbles, when he goes back to the future to 1985 at the end, it shows you the clock tower. Remember the helicopter flies over, the police helicopter?
Yep.
That piece of crumbled plaster is still there, whereas the start of the movie, it's not.
See, that's just those little attention to details, and that's what makes a movie very memorable. That's why in like modern movies, especially like when they go back in time, like they take place in the 1990s. If I see a piece of technology or even like a logo look different that wasn't there, then it'll take me out of a movie.
Yeah, exactly. And as I say, you're right. It's just those wee attention to details that make this movie, what, no pun intended, timeless. It's all those wee nuggets that you don't notice in the first watch, maybe not even a fifth watch. But the more you get into it, the more you notice these wee things, and it's just perfectly planned, And yes, the third ending is when he goes to warn Doc, and he's too late, and you see the Lone Pine Mall, and then you have the reveal that Doc actually did save the letter, and it's an amazing ending.
Bulletproof vest. When you first saw it, well, you said you saw it when you were on, but did you think he was actually dead again? And there's just that like they were just trying to show you like you can't change fate or something like that, or you can't change everything?
No, because I knew, that's what I'm saying. I probably watched part two more than I watched part one when I was very young, so I always knew that Doc was wearing a bulletproof vest. It always stuck with me. I mean, I don't have a memory of being fooled by that as such, But you're asking, like, do I think is that fate? No, I don't think it's fate. I often sometimes, being a fan of the franchise, think about like timelines. And kind of like, so we have a 1985 timeline where George is a loser and Lorraine's an alcoholic, and then we have this other timeline where they're not. So that other timeline is still. If you believe in that, remember we talked about it in the Terminator podcast about there's timelines that coexist. You can have multiple different timelines, different things going on. So to me, that other timeline still exists. It's not erased. It's just Marty lapped into a different timeline. It's like when Doc explains it in the second one about it skewing off into a different timeline. Now, there's been a lot of movie fans that have said over the years, like, then why is Marty still the same? why is he not changed? And I always thought that for years, I always thought, and I still think they should have done it. When I look back, even people say it's a perfect movie, and it is. But I always think to myself, wouldn't it be great, or if when he wakes up in the morning and he walks into his house, and Dave and Linda are sitting at the breakfast table, and he says to Dave, "What are you wearing, Dave?" And he says, "Why are you calling me Dave? You're Dave. You're Dave." And Marty says, "I'm Marty. You're Dave." And Dave says, "No, I'm Marty. You're Dave," because he said, "But if you ever have kids and Rain says Marty, what a lovely name. So why did they wait till their third kid to call him Marty?"
Yeah, that would have been clever. I mean, they would never do it because Marty McFly's iconic, and they wouldn't change the name at the end. But that would be very clever.
Yeah, now the only other thing it could be, I know that people and families like naming their first kids after someone, so maybe, I don't know, there's somebody in the family they wanted to name them after, or sometimes you used to, like, if you got the child christened, sometimes you'd name the kid after the person who's the godfather and things like that. So maybe that explains it. But I always, even now, the other night I was watching it going, wouldn't that be class if he said to him, "Why are you calling me Dave? You're Dave."
That would have been definitely great. It would have been cool. I mean, some things do change for him. He has a truck now. That's pretty cool.
Well, I wanted to ask you about this as well, because I'm not sure if you're aware about this. And I had a different idea the other night when I was studying this for the pod. Crispin Glover decided not to come back for part 2 because, he didn't come back for monetary reasons. However, he had a big dispute about the ending of this movie, and he didn't
Yes.
like the end of it. Yeah, did you hear this? He basically had this big dispute with Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis that the reward for the McFlys was monetary, and it was very kind of 1980s Reagan era. You get rewarded with material things. I watched this the other night, and I always thought he was right. I always thought, right enough, because Marty gets the jeep he always wanted, and now George is an author, and they've got lovely furniture and blah blah blah. But when I was watching this the other night, I realized that that's not the case. What did you think?
That I never really thought. Honestly, I never agreed with him to begin with when I first heard that, because I heard that on pretty recently about how his views were towards the movie, and that's why he felt like I could see it what he's saying, but the way I never really took it that way. I just felt like he was more confident. It still took him 30 years to get his book made. Obviously, they're doing a little bit better, but I don't think that's all they gained. They all change and become better people as
Yes.
well. That's how I feel. Like, she was a little bit heavier at the beginning of the movie. She looks like she's a more fit at the end of it. Obviously, it's implied that she's not drinking as much. We don't know for sure, but he's more confident. Everybody becomes a better. The brother's more successful. Like, he was working at a fast food joint and he's wearing a suit. I don't know exactly what he's doing, but it's something in an office. Everybody is a better person than they were at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what kind of, when I started thinking about it the other night, that's what dawned on me. Because I always had this question, John. Well, if you put your mind at Jalen Conley Shanahan, then why is he only publishing his first book 30 years later? And then I realized the other night, no, George enjoyed writing stories. He had a talent for it, but he was never a bloody Stephen King or a John Grisham, right? He's not one of those guys. It took him 30 years because maybe he's not a great author after all. He's not that good, but he kept at it and he never gave up. That's why they're still in the same house. And I totally agree with you about the kids. It's all to do with George and Lorraine being better people, which filters down to their kids. You see that in Dave. He's now doing better for himself. He's in a better job. You see that in Linda, who's confident with boys, and you hear about him saying, Linda, I can't keep up with all your boyfriends, right? And as for the house, to me, the furniture to me wasn't any better, or it was just the decor was better. The house wasn't as grimy. It was brighter. It was cleaner. It was cheerier. That's all it was with the house. And as for him getting the truck, I looked at it as George has just published his first novel. He got his child a truck.
Yeah, I mean, I never really took it as more than like you. They're in the same house. More than likely, what it is that he has the supervisor's job that apparently Biff had at the beginning of the movie, and I just think he just still works at the same place, and he wrote this book on the side, living out his chasing his
Yeah.
dream. That's all I thought it was. And he got the nice new truck, but okay, like you said, they're a little bit more successful than they were, but I don't think they're worlds better successfully.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. If the world wouldn't be living in a house.
No, they'd be in a way bigger house, not a house in the neighborhood. They didn't gain that much more. They just have a little bit more of an expendable income.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. And also as well about you're saying about obviously Lorraine's no longer an alcoholic because she's an alcoholic at the start of this. You know, her life has went in a direction that she is not happy with. You know, and you remember earlier on in the movie when Doc says about you got to get your parents together. What do they like to do together? And Marty's like, nothing. Right? Which but later on they're back from just playing golf, isn't that right?
Yeah,
They're
they
doing-
look like they're in love.
They're still in love and they're doing something together.
They've just improved their lives, and they've all been better people for it. That's all that really they
Yeah.
gained. And along
do you-
with that, they got better jobs.
Well, yeah, exactly. And do you think the experience made Biff a better person?
I think so. I mean, he's definitely a better. I mean, has he changed in his heart? I don't know about that. I mean, he's still trying to get one over with the one coat of wax. So, maybe George just has more power over him.
Yeah, and that got me thinking about so they worked for the same company in the original timeline because basically Biff was lazy and was bullying George to do his homework for him. So he was basically riding on George's coattails and just, you know what I mean, and taking advantage of George just to get it ahead in life. But by the end of the movie, he's got his own business. So he's learned a lesson there. And not only that, it's the type of business he's in, which made me think when I was watching this the other night, oh, so he went down the road of this auto detailing business. It was because his own car got trashed with the manure.
Yeah. That's exactly why he did it. He always because he spent $300 on getting his car fixed.
Yeah. But the thing is, you got to remember too as well. Back to the Future Part 2 wasn't written yet, so you think about so the Norman's are thinking, yeah, maybe he had to fix his own car. Maybe he thought, oh, this is something which I could do for other people and make a bit of money, and then he has his own business. You're saying about he's trying to get one over. Yeah, he is trying to get one over, but he's not nasty anymore because when George pulls him on it and says, "Now, Biff, don't lie to me," and he's like, "I'm sorry, Mr. McFly, just put the second coat on that." You know what I mean? But in the second movie at the start where he sees the flying DeLorean, he's like, "What the hell is going on here?" So they're bringing the old Biff back. But that's the second movie.
Yeah, and which brings us into the final scene of the movie, which is, of course, roads. We don't need where we're going. We don't need any roads. Setting up Back to the Future 2, which I guess at that point they were assuming it was going to be a success when they put that ending on there.
Well, I like first of all how Doc jumps out and he's like with a glass. He's like, "Buddy!" and he runs over and he says about something about the future, and Marty says to him, "What happens to us in the future? What do we become, assholes or something?" And he's like, "It's your kids, Marty. Something's got to be done about your kids." But look, no, that whole ending was a joke. That whole ending, there was no plans for a sequel. There was no plans for a trilogy because Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale says that if we had plans for a sequel, we would never ever have put Doc and Marty going into the future because the future is so hard to predict. And not only that, we wouldn't have put Jennifer in the car. It says it was just
kills it. That's the bad part, is you set it up because now we have to find a way to have her out of the most of the second movie.
Yeah, and that's basically, they said, look, there was no plans. It says it was just, the ending was just a joke. It was a gag. We would never have done that if we had plans to make a second film. But listen, it's another iconic part of the movie. The car taking off and him saying, "Roads, where we're going, we don't need roads." I wouldn't change it. And even I think Ronald Reagan said that in a speech in the 80s.
He did say that. He sure did.
Yeah. And a funny anecdote which I laughed at during the making of this. Sid Sheinberg, the CEO of Universal Pictures, the head of everything, who gives the go-ahead or the or gives the thumbs down, says no, we're not making it, or we are making it, or we're going to stop making it, or this is how much money you're getting, and you're not getting any more. He hated the title Back to the Future.
Oh, I've heard this story. I love
You
this
heard this?
story. Yeah.
And he wrote to the I think it was Zemeckis and Gale and said, don't like a title. I suggest this Spaceman from Pluto.
Yep.
And they thought it was horrible. They were horrified, and they said to Spielberg, and Spielberg thought, "Is this some kind of joke?" So then he thought, "Oh, do you know what? I'll treat it as a joke." And he wrote back to him a letter saying, or a telegram, whatever, saying, "Thanks very much for your suggestion. We all had a great laugh about it." And he says, "We never heard from Sid again. He was so embarrassed."
Yeah, because they would all think it was a joke.
They thought it was the idea.
That's one of my favorite Spielberg stories, that he has the confidence to do that.
Yeah, well, him and Sid Sheinberg were very, very close, and Spielberg could get away with things with Sid Sheinberg that nobody else could get away with.
It made a lot of money, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, well, he had Spielberg making big pictures for him, and that's the thing too. The Lorraine McFly is actually named after Lorraine Gary, who was Sid Sheinberg's wife.
Oh, that's a nice little touch.
And that's what I'm saying about Ned Tannen was high up in Universal Pictures, and they named Biff after him.
Yeah, I love it when you hear stories like that, when it's like little, Easter eggs for people who helped get the movie made.
Yeah, it's also to keep them sweet too, isn't it, John?
Yeah, it makes them a little bit happy too. You want to keep them happy.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%.
But yeah, we've gone for about an hour and a half, well, more than that now on this movie, and you know what? I can't think of a better movie that deserved it.
Yeah, 100%. Mate, I could sit and talk about this movie all night. Such a great film, one of my favorites of all time. It's been a favorite of mine my whole life, and yeah, it's just so good. And I hope it didn't ramble on too much.
I don't think so. I think we really gave this movie its flowers, which it so deserved. This is actually, like I was saying early at the very beginning of the pod, when I first saw this movie, I can truly remember how I felt about this movie and just being blown away by it. Like, I remember the feeling of being like, this movie, it's just so well done. Everything pays off. And if it just stayed as one movie, it would have been fine. But I know you said that you love the entire trilogy, your favorite trilogy of all time. But if in a nutshell, the original Back to the Future is one of the greatest movies ever made.
Yeah, definitely. Listen, I could see this movie being just a standalone, but I just feel as if, people would have been. I could imagine watching this in the cinema in '85 and walking out and going, "Can't wait to see the second one." That's what you would be saying. This movie would be clamoring. People would be clamoring for a follow-up to this movie. They had to do a sequel.
No choice. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, they had to. And look, I know I've seen people online who, very few, in a minority, that don't like the sequels at all. I don't know. I think they're missing out.
I used to feel a certain way about Back to the Future 2. I didn't like it as much because I think it really does pale in comparison to the original. But I've come around on that one, mainly because I actually like how it leads into 3, and I really like 3. I think Back to the Future 3 is actually a fantastic movie.
Yeah, totally agree. And look, 2 is one of those movies. To me, 2 is a great middle chapter. Well, I hope to do 2 one day on the pod with you, John.
Definitely would do that.
100% would do it at some stage, and so I'll have a lot to say about that. But what I'll say is about 2 is that, if there's any flaws in it, it's that it's a bit too busy. But as a middle chapter, it's excellent.
It's still got so much iconic stuff in it. I mean, people might not even realize when they think about the Sports Almanac, that's a Back to the Future 2 thing. That's not even a Back to the Future 1 thing. And I think that Sports Almanac is very famous.
Well, I would argue, aside from the car, the most famous prop from Back to the Future is the hoverboard.
Yeah, the hover and the shoes that go along with it, the self-tying shoes.
Yeah, power laces. Yeah. Now, I agree with you. We've discussed this before, that part 3 to me is my second favorite now. For many years, it was part 2. When I was young, 2 was my favorite. And then when I was a teenager, 2 was my second favorite. It just went 1, 2, 3. But I always loved 3. And now that I'm older, I actually love 3 more than 2. Yeah. And as I say, that's why I always say it's my favorite trilogy. I mean, for years when I was growing up, people I knew loved the Star Wars trilogy. You know, they used to tell me that's my favorite trilogy. We had the Indiana Jones trilogy. I love that trilogy as well. But as a trilogy, as in like an ABC, a start, a middle, and an end, Indiana Jones didn't really have that. It was 3 separate stories.
Yeah, there's no connecting tissue other than, the characters. Certain characters carry over, but they're individual stories.
Yeah, exactly. And it's still a great trilogy. Indiana Jones 3 movies are absolutely outstanding. But then you had the Godfather trilogy, which the third movie was, it's not great. And this was before Lord of the Rings. I'm trying to think of or even other trilogies, or even The Matrix came along.
I only like the first Matrix movie.
I've only seen the first one, mate, to be honest. I'm just thinking of trilogies here to give them their due, you know what I mean? In discussion of trilogies, because even now, like, I still have, and I've seen Lord of the Rings trilogy, but to me, this is my favorite trilogy. This is a great trilogy of movies, start, a middle, and an end, that I absolutely love.
I can't disagree. I mean, it's one of my favorite trilogies of all time because, like you were pointing out, most trilogies, there's always at least one in there that isn't good. And for a while, I didn't love Back to the Future 2, but now when I watch Back to the Future, I want to immediately go into Back to the Future 2 and 3 and continue the story because I just love being with the characters. And then I just truly enjoy 3 now. Like, there's no strings attached to it. I just think it's a very good movie.
Yeah, and you're saying about trilogies, so like, for example, I know a lot of people actually love Return of the Jedi, and that's their favorite. That's fair enough. But like, I think the consensus in that is that Return of the Jedi is the weakest of the 3. Now, for me, Return of the Jedi, I don't think it's a great movie. It's okay. Whereas I can say that I think that there's 3 great movies in this trilogy. Now, there's people that may disagree with me, especially with Part 3. I know there's a wee bit of hatred out there for Part 3, but I think this is maybe people that haven't seen it in a long time and maybe are just thinking back to, oh, that's the Western one. But like you, I just think the third one has a lot of heart. I think it hasn't dated. I think it's well made and it looks great. It sounds great, and I love the story between Doc and Clara, and I also loved the subplot of Marty going up against Buford as well, and just that whole Western backdrop and the score. So I really, really enjoy the third movie. I can't say the same for Return of the Jedi. I can't say the same even for The Godfather Part 3, and I'm not a big Lord of the Rings fan. So I'm trying to think of other trilogies at the minute, but that's why I just...
You've got the Dark Knight trilogy too, where The Dark Knight Rises isn't as good as the first 2.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I like Batman Begins. I like The Dark Knight. There's scenes in The Dark Knight Rises I like, but an overall overarching story, it's poor for me. And it's not that okay. If we want to talk about the Dark Knight trilogy, here's a Batman that was basically only on the scene for a year before he gave up. It's not Batman to me. I'm sorry.
He gave up the cape. Yeah, he did give it up pretty quick and retire.
He gave it up in a year. Watch it. He came along in Batman Begins. The start of The Dark Knight, they make a comment saying that he's been doing it a year. And by the end of the movie, which the movie probably takes place over a couple of days or a week, he retires. And then he comes back and Rises to me isn't a great movie. So as an overall trilogy, no, it's no. I mean, I would put Indiana Jones above it. I'd put Star Wars above it. I'd put the Godfather trilogy above it, because Godfather 1 and 2 is hell of a lot better than Batman.
No, I was agreeing with you 100%. You can't. I mean, the Godfather 1 and 2. It's just, I wish 3 could even just get in the ballpark with 1 and 2, and that would be the greatest trilogy ever.
Oh yeah, exactly. And don't get me wrong. There's times I don't mind Part 3. I'm not gonna say I like it. I don't mind it. I don't hate it. I can give Part 3 a watch now and again. It's not like Alien 3. I know Alien 3, and I talk about this every week now. It's not like Alien 3. We talk about Alien 3 every week, but I know Alien's not a trilogy, but it's not like Alien 3 where I'm so disappointed at the end of Alien 3. I can watch Godfather 3 and kind of go, I wish I had went a different direction. Okay. I don't hate it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I got to rewatch it. I tried the new cut of it last time, and I'm like, it fixes some things, I guess, but, it's just when you go watch them in order, watching Godfather 1 and 2, they're just perfect back-to-back. You watch them together, and then 3, you're like, man, it's a step down. It's just, and that's the same year as Goodfellas, so I think that hurts it even more.
Yeah, the thing is with The Godfather is that the end of part two is the perfect ending. It's a
Hmm.
the part two is a perfect complement to the original. Because you have Vito at the end of his reign, and then the second when you see Vito and you see Michael in the first one starting out, right, and then the second one is Vito at the start of his reign, and you see Michael basically at the end of his reign. At the end of his
Yep.
reign, but then they had to do this third one where he was trying to go legit. And to be fair, I like a lot of it. I always remember. I think it was my dad said to me, um, that the problem with three was that people didn't like to see Michael weak.
Yeah, that's a part of it too. Is that he kind of comes crawling back to K. That's the thing that kind of bothers me a little bit.
Yeah,
Then obviously Sophia Coppola is just not good, and it was
yeah,
supposed, and then you hear it's supposed to be Winona Ryder originally, and it's like, would it just worked so much better, especially for the time,
yeah,
But I do like Andy Garcia. I always like Andy
yeah.
Garcia, and he's good in that movie. He's very good in that movie. And Al Pacino, he's still good in the movie as Michael Corleone. But I actually kind of agree with your dad a little bit. Seeing Michael weak like that, it is tough for such a character that we saw have this great arc.
Yeah, and a lot of it for me in the third one is about redemption for him. It's about him facing up to what he had done in his past and trying to be forgiven for it, killing his brother and other things. And but then the biggest kind of character change is the sister Connie. She's basically shadow running the family.
Yeah, which
Um,
never would have happened, and during the first two movies.
no, exactly. But listen, those movies are epics and they span generations and lifetimes, and people don't always stay the same person that they always were. So I can understand that. That she was basically, in the first movie she's abused and she's, you know what I mean, and in the second movie she becomes a wee bit of a um uh, what would you say?
Alcohol, drug addict, psychopath. He's got a little
Oh,
bit.
but she's kind of living it up. She's like a socialite, isn't she? Because she's got the money of the family behind her. Obviously,
Yeah,
she's got money.
she
And
doesn't see
she's
her
just,
kids though, and like she's on like her third husband or something like
yeah.
that.
But he says about you're running about like a whore, doesn't he? And
Yeah.
she's going from guy to guy and whatever. But she's messed up in her life. But you see her, she kind of comes back towards the end of the movie and helps Michael out with the kids.
Yeah,
So you,
we do see her starting to straighten up her life at the end. Actually, you're right.
yeah. So you could believe that she does take that step towards the third movie. You know what I mean? But yeah. So I don't hate the third movie. I think it was well intended. I think it's well made. There's some good scenes in it. Like I think the best scene in the whole movie is when Andy Garcia kills what do you call your man? What do you call him? Shoots him in the street.
Oh yeah, that's a great scene. The movie has,
Zaza.
yeah, there is great scenes in the movie. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to like knock the whole thing completely. It has its moments, but I just the problem is it's comparing it to one and two. You're always gonna do that.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly. Listen, and that's the whole thing too. I think that's the point I'm trying to make is like as well. Like if you want to talk about trilogies, is that the first and second one are so superior that nearly any trilogy that's ever been made. It's only the third one that kind of drops it down. But that goes back to what I was saying about Back to the Future. I just think as a trilogy, as a part one, two, and three, for me, it's the best. And I don't get that out of any other trilogy that I've ever watched.
I mean, yeah, you do prove a good point, and it all started with this movie right here, the original Back to the Future from 1985. I think we said all we could say for now about this classic film until we get to Back to the Future 2 and 3, which
Yeah.
we'll get to eventually.
Yep. 100%.
And the next two movies that we're going to be doing are it's actually two for the price of one. We're going to be talking about Jaws 3D and Jaws The Revenge, which I'm looking forward to watching. The 4Ks are coming out pretty soon. I know that David's excited.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that this has kind of creeped up on me. It's only another couple of weeks to wait till I get the box sets.
Yep. And I think that's so we'll be recording this in 2 weeks as well. You guys will see it in 2 weeks from the time you're watching this. And yeah, thanks for stopping by, guys, with us. And we hope you enjoyed the show. And we'll be seeing you guys around. Hey guys, just popping in at the end of the video for this week's Digital Code Giveaway. In every single video that we do here on the channel on Friday, I'm going to ask you guys 2 Digital Code Giveaway questions. All you have to do is answer one of those in the comment section below. As long as you do that, you come back to Tuesday's video. I'll put your name on a magic wheel. We'll spin that bad boy 2 times. The 2 names it lands on, they'll have their choice of the digital codes that you've seen on your screen before you today. And we guys got done talking about Back to the Future, so I have to ask you guys, what is your favorite time travel movie of all time? And what is your favorite trilogy of all time? Leave those answers in the comments section below while you're down there. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share this video if you could, turn notifications on. We also have channel memberships. We have a Friends of the Channel tier, a Producers tier, where you're going to find Jason Martin and John Doe Juggalo. We also have a Directors tier, where you're going to find Frank from Frank's Media and Reviews, and that's also where you're going to find Mr. Smelly Potato. Frank and John Doe Juggalo both have great YouTube channels that you should subscribe to, especially if you love physical media. But if you got no money to throw away, guys, don't you worry about it at all. All we hope is that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to get out in those streets, tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.